So here we are now in our penultimate week in the Sermon on the Mount, this incredible, life-changing, arguably world-changing collection of teachings from Jesus Christ. And in our penultimate week, we're now coming towards the end of the block, the central block of teaching that there is in the Sermon on the Mount. You remember how the sermon started with the attitude of the Beatitudes. You could do worse than go back there and read those again as a foundation for your time in the sermon this evening. And having gone through the attitude of the Beatitudes, Jesus then gave us those two magnetic, compelling images, the salt of the earth and the city on a hill, drawing people in that they might give praise to God. Well, having given those two images to us, Jesus then said something in chapter 5 verse 17. He said this, chapter 5 verse 17, "Do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I've not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them." He said that and then said, now you need to go on and do these and teach others to do them as well. Well, that was the beginning of the section that ends in chapter 7, verse 12. Look down if you've got it in front of you. It's the end of our section that we're going to be working through tonight. There, Jesus says, chapter 7, verse 12, "So whatever you wish that others would do to you, do also to them, for this is the law and the prophets." It's sometimes called the golden rule. You might have heard it referred to as such. Do to others as you would have done to you. But Jesus says it's not just the golden rule, it's the summary of the law and the prophets. And so the section started in chapter 5 verse 17 talking about the law and the prophets and the way Jesus would fulfill them, and now ends in chapter 7 verse 12 saying this is the summary of the law and the prophets. Well, Jesus has given lots of teaching in between those two markers that top and tail the section, but we've noticed as we've gone along two emphases that are key to living out the teaching that Jesus has been giving us. The first being an emphasis on internal integrity, and the other being a focus on the Father. Internal integrity and a focus on the Father. Internal integrity in contrast to rank hypocrisy. That's the problem that the Pharisees have in Matthew, and Jesus says, now your righteousness needs to exceed that of the hypocritical Pharisees. A hypocrisy that says, no, I don't actually commit adultery with anyone, but still has a heart that's full of lust. A hypocrisy says, no, I don't murder anyone, but still has a heart that is full of anger. Hypocrisy says, I'm full of love, but that absolutely hates its enemies. A hypocrisy that marks itself out by religious performance that everyone can see, but that is dead on the inside when it comes to its relationship with God. Now, Jesus says you need to have an internal integrity rather than an external hypocrisy. But the antidote to that is having a focus on the Father. That is to say, having a right understanding of who God is and what it means to be his children. Again, the idea of the fatherhood of God, it came up as early as the Beatitudes, didn't it? In chapter 5, verse 9, Jesus said, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God." A tantalizing image right there at the beginning of the sermon. Then, chapter 5, verse 44, he said, "I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, so that you may be sons of your Father who is in heaven." Then in chapter 6 verse 1 and in verse 4 and in verse 6 and in verse 18 he spoke of receiving a reward from our Father in heaven. And then in the midst of that little bit of teaching that we looked at if you were with us last week, all about being able to avoid anxiety, in chapter 6 verse 32 Jesus said this. He said, "The Gentiles seek after all of these things, and your heavenly Father knows that you need them all." You've got a Father in heaven. And when you understand that that is what God is like, not a cruel boss or a headmaster prowling the corridors of eternity, but instead a Father who loves us and wants to give us every good thing, then all of a sudden you become less concerned with your external performance for everyone to see and more concerned with the relationship that you have with him. The two are integrally interwoven with each other, the one the antidote to the other. Well, now as we come to the end of this section, topped and tailed by Jesus' statement about the law and the prophets, we come to two blocks of teaching that focus first of all on what it is really to have internal integrity, and then second of all on what it means to have a focus on the Father. Chapter 7 verses 1 to 6 are all about internal integrity. They are teaching for us that help us understand how we avoid the hypocrisy of the Pharisees. And then chapter 7 verses 7 to 11 are all about what it really looks like to have a relationship with a Father in heaven who loves it when we come and ask so that he might give to us. Again, you can see how the one is the antidote to the other. And so for the penultimate time and for the last time as we work through this little section of ethical teaching, remember the focus on internal integrity and the focus on the Father. Because if we can get these right and get a deep grasp and grip and understanding of these realities, so more and more we will become the salt of the earth, the city on the hill.